Recording in progress.
Sorry, are you able to? 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Are you able to hear? Are you able to hear? Yeshua, can you hear me? Yeah? Yeshua Mazel Tov.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. Sorry. When in Meshivas Nefesh, we started learning Simcha Chav Dalet, page Ayin Gimel, this week. We're talking about Gvura. Gvura means many things. It means the strength to overcome obstacles. Gvura means physical strength. It means also din and holding back. So this is from Torah Reish Mem Tes, where Rabbi Nachman says that Ikar Gvura hu belev. That's the Torah that we learned. That Ikar Gvura is not physically how strong a person is. It's the Ikar Gvura is belev. Just we'll read the words of Rabbi Nachman again, and then we'll go back into the Torah here. On top of the page, the Ikar Gvura hu belev. Ki misha libo chazak. When a person's heart is strong. When a person has that Gvura salev, and Eina Misyar Mishum Adam Mishum Davar. He's not afraid of anybody or anything. Yachalasas Gvurais Nairos, the Lichbaish Milchamas Chazakas. We see one, and the example that Rabbi Nachman gave, which is not brought down of his from Shimshon Agibar, that the Indian of Shimshon Agibar, the strength of Shimshon Agibar was not something because of his physical gifts. The strength was because of the ruach. There was payim, there was a ruach that filled the heart of Shimshon Agibar, and there was the Ruach Hashem that filled him. And in that way, he was able to do all kinds of things. That Lichbaish Milchamas, Chazakas, Chayzik, V'ometz Libo, Shein Mispachet, Rasta Kishrei Milchama, HaChazaka. And a person who has this Gvura Salev is not afraid to go into the war, is not afraid to fight. Obviously, Kashmir and Ruchnis. And the same thing he says about Hashem. So we're in the third paragraph, which says, Ach minayin lochim leif noaz malei ruach. So how do you get such a heart? We understand that in order to be victorious in the milchamas of life, either in Gashmius or in Ruchnius, a person has to have this quality of Gvura Salev. Where do you get that? So how does one acquire Gvura Salev? Ach minai lochem leiv noaz malei b'ruach chaim shel milchama. From where does a person take such a heart? It's filled with this azis, this strength, this ruach chaim shel milchama. Shuval zayis nimsa la'or divrei Chazal amavoyim b'hamaimer ezo gibar kavish yitzur. So we see that the Mishnah says a gibar is a person who's kavish yitzur. Kol ma'gvura salev nimsa etzem misha zocher lichbaish yitzur. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. Where do you find Gvura Salev? Well, we'll talk about that. Where do you find Gvura Salev? The person who has the strength to overcome his Yetzer Hara. Okay, but that's the question we're asking. How do I get that? You're telling me that the way to acquire the Gvura Salev is by being strong. That's basically what it's saying. The Mishnah says, Ezo HaGibor, a Karbish is Yitzhar. You're able to, a Gibor is a person who conquers his Yetzer Hara. So where did I get that from? I understand it requires Gurus Halev. So where do I get that from? So the answer is, Ezehu Giba Kavish Yitzro. What does that mean? We see this, each one of us knows this, that, commercial, if a person has decided that they're going to go on a diet, dieting is always a good marshal for this, for a milchama that people face all the time, and it's not talking about Dvar Masurim, just about eating. So when it comes to a diet, when does a person just go on and on, overeating and continuing on in that way that's unhealthy? When he feels powerless to change, and he's able to point to all the failures of his life, of how you see, I've tried this before and I'm unsuccessful. The truth of the matter is that when a person sees that he's able to do something, we see this with the children, and it's the same thing with adults. Ezehu Gibor, what gives the person Gevurah? The realization that he's able to be Kavish Yitzro. Is that, yes, if we're asking where do you get that first Gevurah from? You have to dig deep into your nefesh kiss to get that Gevurah. But the greatest strength that you get is by being strong. And when you see that you're able to be strong, and you don't have to have that extra piece of cake or that piece of kugel, whatever it is, and you see that you have the strength to say, no, I'm not going to have this. From there you take Gvuras Halev. From the realization that you have been able in the past to take control of yourself, and that is the source of Gvuras Halev. When a person sees that he's matzliach, nimsa baruach chayim, then that ruach chayim returns to him. The leiv chazak, and a strong heart lahamshich kedua, to continue. So he's explaining, from here a person can understand that even if a person has not yet been zeicha lahasmid b'milchama, to have a consistent success in his milchamas, lichboish lahasliach, to conquer, to be matzliach, nevertheless, a person can take this moment, and whatever it is at this particular time in your life that is challenging you, not to have a plan long term, how am I going to be, in all future milchamas. I don't know about future milchamas. But right now, this second, this Yetzer Hara, this nisayon that I have right now, to be kavish, to do what you can right now, lahaschil ma'achshav, lios bechlal hakavish es yitzro, to be a person who is kavish es yitzro, lahaschil page ayindal, lilcham ech sheyiyah, to make a decision that ech sheyiyah, this moment, this yetzer, this milchama, ech sheyiyah, whatever it is, I'm going to be menatzeach, whether it's a word of lashon hara, whether it's looking at something. Again, I'm not making a chesh on all future milchamas. But right now, to be able to be kavish this yetzer, this moment, because etzem ha'esek b'milchama, the very fact that you are in battle, the esek b'milchama, that you haven't walked away from things. The worst thing is when a person just walks away. But the esek ha'milchama itself, Rabbi Nachman is teaching that the esek ha'milchama itself, masha'omed lihilachem, that you're here. You're here to fight. That the very fact that you don't walk away and that you engage the enemy in this fight, that itself gives a person koiches chadashim, new koiches. Everybody knows that in their own lives, that that's how it works. Umagbir belibo es azus, and that increases in the heart the courage, the strength, to continue on. Even if you get punched, even if there's something of a setback, but the person has the azus l'haistif l'hilachem, v'kegalgal achayzeh. So that's exactly it. It is a wheel that turns and repeats itself. She'ikah nitzachon ha'milchama v'yidei gvuras halayv. The nitzachon of a milchama is with gvuras halayv. And where do you get gvuras halayv from? Gvuras halayv ba ayidei etzem haknisa l'milchama. Doesn't mean you always have to win, but etzem haknisa l'milchama, by not being afraid to go to war. That's what the attitude that many people have, is that this is something that I can't control. Eating, I can't control my eating. I'm a nice person, I do a lot of nice things, my life is otherwise pretty, but I can't control my eating. So the person doesn't start a diet, the person doesn't read up and try to work on things with the eating and so on, doesn't go to a nutritionist or to a doctor or whatever it might be. The person has just given up on that war. He doesn't enter into that war. That's what many people, that's what happens to many people. But the Eisek HaMilchama itself, when the person is Oisek in Milchama, he's Oisek in Milchama. So even if the soldier, even if it's a difficult day and something happens and it wasn't the best matzav, nevertheless, he's already in the Milchama, and by being a person that is a fighter, then you develop more and more Gvuras Halayv, as opposed to the person who surrenders, who walks away. By the etzem haknisa milchama, the very fact that you enter into the war, that you're not afraid, that you pull yourself together to fight against this, to wage a war, the very fact that you're in the milchama, and you're in the eisek ha-milchama, that increases the Gvuras Halayv that you have. That strengthens the Gvuras Halayv. And what other choice does a person have? The person just walks away from the fight. He's and he just gives in to the Yetzirah, whether it's for food or for something that's forbidden. But he just gives in. He doesn't try. Then not only has he not won this specific battle, but his heart has become weaker and weaker. He becomes less of a soldier. It's not just a matter of this battle. It's not just the din and the cheftza of this battle. It's the gavra himself, the person himself, is not a soldier. He's not a soldier. There's that famous story that was told by Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, by Mendel Fortefaz or Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, one of the tzaddikim that was in a Russian prison camp, and he saw, like, in the middle of the night. It's a famous story. He saw in the middle of the night that one of the other Russian prisoners was going under his bunk or something and pulling out something, and this tzaddik was watching how that Russian guy, wasn't Jewish, some Russian guy, he was putting on his army uniform. And his army uniform had all kinds of decorations on it. And he's just, like, in the middle of the night, he thought everybody was sleeping. He started, like, marching up and down, like in the barracks. So the next day, either it was Rabbi Mendel Fortefaz or Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, the next day the tzaddik says, look, I have to tell you, whatever the guy's name is, Ivan, I have to tell you, it was a bit strange because I saw you last night, marching around in the middle of the night with your army uniform. He said, listen, they took all of us here and they threw us in here and they're making us into animals. They're making us into animals. That we're fighting for a piece of bread and the way they treat us, and the way we're slaves over here. So every now and then I tried to put on my old uniform and to remember that I was like a general in the Russian army. I'm a Bar Hachi. To remind myself of who I am. And the tzaddik would say this over, that he was very nispal from that. How this guy had such a musag of remaining a soldier, of identifying himself as a soldier, even though right now he's a slave labor, and he's very, very far from being some commanding officer in the army, but he identified as a soldier, and that identity gave him this ruach chayim, which is called ruach alev, a certain gevuras alev. When the person no longer sees himself or herself as a soldier, sometimes it's because you've heard over and over again that you're lo yitzlach, lo yitzlach. You'll never be able to be matzliach. You're a loser. You're not matzliach. So, but you see how it works. That when one of those people that was always told that he's a lo yitzlach, when he sees in a certain area of his life that he has some hatzlacha, then it changes his entire perspective of everything. That he sees that he's not lo yitzlach. His father told him he's lo yitzlach. Some teacher told him that he's lo yitzlach. He sees that he can be matzliach. So the ikar is to continue on being a soldier, not to walk away. But if a person walks away, then it's not only that he's lost this battle, but he himself becomes weaker and weaker. And then weakness and agmas nefesh begins to seep into his heart. Because the very fact that you're a deserter, that you deserted, you left your friends on the battlefield and you walked away, that's machdashas alei. That just confirms that you're a person that's weak, that doesn't have a heart. And then not only you're not able to defeat the enemy, you lose all of your chiyas. You lose all of your ratzon. One of the phrases of Rabbi Shimon in the Piyut that we're going to sing tonight is that it was Nez Begavur. So is that thing you think that Rabbi Shimon? You think that Rabbi Shimon was a person that went out? He was on the battlefield. Maybe he did do some of that. I don't know anywhere in Chazal that we see that Rabbi Shimon was in the army. But we see the way Rabbi Shimon was a person of unbelievable Azus Alev. The way he stood up to the Romans, the way he stood up to those Jews that were complimenting the Romans, like the Gemara tells us. The whole Mahus of Rabbi Shimon, in the cave, out of the cave, the whole Mahus of Rabbi Shimon was Gevurah. The worst thing is when a person feels that he's simply incapable of being in the fight anymore. He's incapable. That's what I mentioned last week. That when you have a husband and wife and they're arguing with each other, it's not pleasant and it messes the kids up and everything. But it's a simon that lepnach, that they're alive. That the marriage is still alive. At least they're arguing, they're fighting. It's like if one of them doesn't answer back at all, he's like he gave up. He gave up. There's not even a fight anymore. Again, it's not that it's a good thing to fight. Someone's going to say, they're going to take a piece of that and they're going to say that Marmega says it's good for husbands and wives to fight. If a person still has a ruach chayim, that the marriage is still alive. Like there was one of the Chavir who gave me a cartoon years ago, it was a long time ago, but it was in the cartoon, there was this husband that he hanged himself. He hanged himself. And he wrote like a little suicide note that he put on his chest, like something like, I couldn't take it anymore. And she came in, the wife came in and found him hanging with a note. And she took out a pen, she says, he can't even spell right. He started correcting his Yeah, correct. So this guy was finished like a long time ago. Just finished a long time ago. Yeah. So he doesn't have the koyach l'hilachim. I don't have the strength to argue anymore. I don't have the strength to fight anymore. So, again, there are many variations of that, but that could mean. But in this case, when it comes to a yetzer, it's like eating. When a person just gives in to eating, when a person just gives in to that, we know that there's a famous thing, the tinus of the Ravid, right? Which doesn't mean you're not eating. It means that there's something on the plate that you really would like to have, but you don't have it. Why shouldn't you have it? It's not that you're overeating. So what's this? And that counts as by the Ravid, that counts as a tinus. In other words, you had a tremendous taiva to eat this as your favorite food, and you want to eat this, and everything inside of you is saying it's coming to you. Why not? It's not like you didn't have so much to eat. You're not overeating, so why shouldn't you eat it? So and why does it count as a tanis? Because he was saying that it's a matter of being a soldier. It's not because of the chefza of the food. That piece of food, whatever it is, that kishka, that kugel, that piece of meat, or that cake, whatever that piece of food is, it's not that you necessarily overate. It's not even that you're necessarily overweight. But you need to be a person who engages in warfare. You need to practice more and more saying no to something that you want. To practice saying no to something that you want. Just because it's not necessarily evil and it might not hurt you, but the fact is that you want it, so sometimes say no. Sometimes say no. I was just, my wife was reading to me a letter. She read in one of the newspapers and magazines, from a magazine about there was a newlywed couple. They came from simple. One of them came from more of a simple, modest background, and the wife wanted very, very much to go because some of her friends were going. She wanted to go on a Pesach program, which is obviously very, very expensive and way beyond their means. They couldn't afford this. So he went to speak to a Rav. And now I didn't read the article that from this Rav, but he went to speak to the Rav because the person wrote a letter about this. He went to speak to the Rav, and the Rav said to him, "I don't want you just married. I don't want your wife to be crushed." That was the word, crushed, with the disappointment of not going on the program. So I will raise some money to pay for the two of you to go for Pesach. So I said, my wife and I both said that we'd never read the article from the Rav. And as the Rav wrote about this in the article, to say that sometimes, this is also an Indian tzedakah. What kind of tzedakah is that? The biggest tzedakah would have been to have a conversation with this couple. To talk about it, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. Not to be crushed by not being on a program with your friends. And this what you could afford, and to live within your means, and we'll see in the future, and so on. And the guy, it says in the letter that the guy was told about that he's working like 2 shifts a day. He's killing himself. He can't make enough money to pay for this Pechech's Pesach. He can't come up with the money. But the Rav's response was not, "Let me talk to her." The Rav's was, "I'll take care of it." And he goes, he tells people, "I need to help somebody out for Pesach." That's the mice. Helping somebody else for Pesach. It used to mean getting somebody a box of matzahs, right? When they don't have a box of matzahs. Which now, you need a whole oyster just for that. But just to get somebody to have a seder, whatever. No, to have a program. To have a Pesach. Because she said, the way it was written in the thing, she got married, she wanted to have the Pesach of her dream. That was it was. And this would be crushing for her. If she didn't have the Pesach of her dream, I don't know where the dream was and how far the dream took her, but this was the Pesach of her dreams. So my wife and I were just shaking our heads. That this is, I'm not upset about if that actually happened. Again, I'm not macabre because I didn't see it. But if the rabbi actually did that, that's what's the. There's so many upsetting things about the story. But from the beginning to the end, but that the rabbi actually indulged the girl in this, in such a thing, to get her a dream Pesach. So there's something must be missing, or the rabbi didn't actually say that. I'm not following up to find out.
I'm curious if they're still married.
I hope everything worked out. She had the Pesach of her dreams.
Yeah.
So, right, he might have the wife of his nightmares. I don't know, but what happens is that if a person is indulged in his or her dreams on a regular basis, it means that over time, this person simply cannot hear the word no. Cannot deal with any disappointment. And life is filled with disappointments. We have to go. It's filled with disappointments. Things often do not work out the way that we want. And that might not be, and even on a much bigger level, that might not be the kid that you were hoping for. That might not be the parnos you were hoping for. That might not be the marriage you want, whatever it is in life. But crushed dreams and so on. So how do you to make a soldier? That Russian guy in the prison camp, he was a soldier. He was bad. He was a soldier. So the fact that he gets beaten, the fact that they don't give him what to eat, he was a soldier. Those are the new Jews from the last generation. Not all of them, but a lot of them were soldiers. Even though they didn't fight officially in the army, but they were soldiers. And therefore, the disappointments of life didn't crush them. They had modest dreams, and even when those modest dreams didn't work out, they were never crushed. They just marched. They kept on marching. That's called Gvuras Halev. And Gvuras Halev means that talk to this girl about how to be kovesh this yetzer of disappointment. How to win. How to be in the milchama. Not what basically the rabbi told her, again, assuming that this actually happened. The rabbi actually told her is that poor baby, she can't fight in this. She can't fight this war. You're a loser. You can't fight this war against indulgence. So then, what does that do for her? How is she going to mischazik? How is she going to be misgaber? Because there are going to be many, many wars that are coming up. They're newlyweds. This is just the beginning. Still all kinds of milchamas in life. And it has to do with all of this we spoke about already so many times over the years. The parents nowadays hovering over the children to make sure that everything is just right, and everything has to be perfect, and all of down to the tiniest little prat that has to be. Then from where are you going to make a young man that's able to be kovesh his yitzra? How is he supposed to be kovesh his yitzra? Everything that he wanted, he got. And all of a sudden he's telling him, now he became 14, 15, he's got a big Yetzirah. Starts earlier than that. But he's ready by mitzvah, he's got a big Yetzirah. And all the rabbis are telling him, oh, no, you can't do that. And the kid says, nobody ever said that to me. Nobody ever told me I can't do that. Anything I ever wanted, I was told I could have. And now all of a sudden, so the rabbi says, I'm not telling you, the Torah tells you. And the rabbi takes out the Shulchan Aruch and shows him, you're not allowed to do this. If you do this, it's terrible, you're going to go to Gehenna, whatever, all these terrible things. But where did this kid become a soldier? He should be able to fight against the Yetzer. Any food that he wanted, anything that he wanted to have, any place he wanted to go, anything he wanted to do, whatever he wanted, he had. Any toy that he wanted, any phone that he wanted, everything that he wanted, he did. He has. And all of a sudden, now he's bar mitzvah, they tell him, no. And he says, I want that more. I want what I want now. I want more than the phone. And mommy's not going to give me the phone. And the rabbis are telling you can't have this not the phone, but this new toy. Except this new toy walks and talks. And you can't have it. So then what are you supposed to do? You didn't make a soldier. Right, so this is the first time in history. I mean, we're very blessed. And we need to be thankful that Baruch Hashem life is so much easier in many ways. But because of that, we're not producing soldiers. No, it's a so I'm not talking about Eretz Yisrael, that's something else. Mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael is entirely different than the mitzvahs over here. What's disappointing for an 18-year-old young man in Eretz Yisrael is not the same thing as disappointing for an 18-year-old here in New York. It was disappointing. What causes him to feel crushed and broken is not the same thing. But I told you what happened. I told you many times that when I was in school in Eretz Yisrael, so we had to do gadna. And there was army training in high school. But they used to take us. They taught us how to shoot guns. And we had to go carrying, schlepping stuff up the mountain. And we had to do like this pre-army training in the school. So my mother, we had to get a reshus to shoot the gun. So my mother would not write such a thing, and she was very, very upset about it. So I'm sending him to school. I'm not sending him to fight. He's going to school. So my father got into that, and I think my father called up and told him to put on like a second backpack onto me. You take a gun and you do what they tell you to do. Because when I was here in New York, gym was basketball. Like one basketball, 40 guys and one basket. That's how it was. Okay, so there was some fighting that went on, to try to get into the game. But that was the extent of our warfare, trying to get the ball. And my father was so excited about this. Good. Yeah. But a soldier? And with girls it's a different mahalach, but it's for the disappointments and the things and the clothing and the each one, Zach and the Kev, with their inyanim. And then everybody has. My uncle's not going to have it. My chayla is not going to have it. Everybody has. How can my chayla not have it? So this is what we're not making soldiers. So what happens is, the person who feels doesn't have he doesn't have the koch to fight. But he doesn't have the koch to fight for things that are important in life. Because now he's not a little kid anymore. Now he's got to fight for his kids. He's got to fight for his marriage. He's got to fight for his Yiddishkeit. He's got to fight for Am Yisrael, whatever it is. But if he's Betzim, not a fighter, so then what are you supposed to do with him? He doesn't have any Gurus HaLev. Because the Muhammad is only with Gurus HaLev. Not how strong you are, but the Gurus HaLev. See, the children are being sapped of their Gurus HaLev. V'chol meniya kala nisbas esla k'meniya she'ein v'koch l'haskal afilu l'haziza. Even a small meniya, some small obstacle, this person sees as something which I can't move this. I can't move this. I told once there was a friend of mine who was Charusis for many years, and he moved into a new house, and he asked me to come over to help with some stuff with his farm, with the shelves and stuff, and I went over there. And so we made up we're going to finish our learning, and then we're going to do some stuff that his wife wanted us to do. So there's this big bookcase, and she wanted us to take it into the study, the bookcase, an empty wooden bookcase. So me and my chavrusa, we stood there by the bookcase, and we looked at it a little bit, and we looked at the doorway, and we both came to the maskana that it's not shaykh. I said it can't fit. And we said, I think about this story so often, and we both said, it's not going to go. It just doesn't fit. Like the two Tamir Chachamim, the board of rabbis concluded that this is not going to fit because we made a cheshbon. How this is not shaykh, not length, this is not going to fit. And we just continued to learn. We figured, I'll have to get a different bookcase or put it somewhere else. And we just continued to learn. In the meantime, his wife, let's just call her Sarala, his wife, she was a strong person, she grabbed the thing by herself and put it right into the room. It's the biggest bizyanis. We didn't think about backing it up and making it left. That was a good, very good, very good. She just looked at us like such, it just looks unbelievable. She just took it and moved it into the room. I think about that story a lot. Because I'm always afraid that I do the other things in my life. And I have to be careful not to do that. It's the easiest thing in the world to do that. It's not shaykh. You know how much they use that word nowadays in the yeshiva world? The word shaykh or not shaykh, you even hear? Oh yeah, that's not shy. They use to say something which is gewaldic too. Not shy. It's strange. Think about it. Not shy. Disengagement. Not shy. Not shy. It is shy. It's just going to take some work, and it's going to take some effort. But this is what happens. Then you become a person. Every minute, he doesn't have the strength to move it. Till it comes to the point that he doesn't even remember there's a war going on. There's nasal kehata. Nasal kehata, the Mishnah says, means it became permitted to you. It became permitted to you. They're advertising now in the Frum magazine. You want to find out what's wrong and how you look into the Frum magazine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they do a lot of nice things. I'm not saying, God forbid, they try to write nice things and do good things, but they're advertising different things. You see, ma lo b'seder. So they're advertising now that it's not a cigarette. And what's the other thing that's very popular now with the guys? Not a cigarette, the other thing.
Vaping?
Vaping. It's not a vaping. It's some kind of flavored thing that doesn't have nicotine. I don't know. Vape has nicotine? I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that. It's a vaping without nicotine, like vaping like fruit juices.
Which means like a lollipop. But they have they have this guy like a cool dude. I hate both of those words. But they have like this cool dude with the yarmulke they put on. A cool dude, like smoking this thing. So I guess smoke comes out of it.
Yeah.
Vapor comes out of it, but there's no nicotine. And there's no vapori, whatever that's in there. And the guy's like this cool guy smoking. And they advertise that like this is healthy. This is another habit that we're trying to make a bunch of money off of some gullible yeshiva bacher. That's what it is. Who is going to get then fixated on having all 5 available flavors. Because smoke comes out of it. If you leave a little bit of the wrapping in your lollipop, you can do that too. You just put it on fire. You have a little smoke. Smoke comes out of it, and it tastes good. And I'm not getting mommy and daddy upset because I'm walking around with something that's not a cigarette and it's not vaping. It's just instead of a person being able to say no. This is dumb. Smoking is dumb. Vaping is dumb. This stuff is bad. It's unhealthy. Instead, we're going to give you an alternative. So, again, you're mass producing these young men that have no gevurah lev at all. We're just going to find a hechetimsa how to make this mutti for you. Instead of you doing the isser over and over and over again, because cigarettes are also, so you have the cigarettes over and over again as nasal keheta, and you're just going to smoke the rest of your life. Instead, mommy and daddy are going to buy you, a case of these new kinds of cigarettes, and they're not bad for you. So the other side will say, oh, "What do you mean? What do you mean? This is we're trying to help this person, and this is a way to help. It's a chitzanistic way to help. It's not a pnimistic way to help." I understand the svara, but it's a chitzanistic way. It's not a pnimis. It's not changing. It's not teaching. It's not helping. It's not growing. It's shifting over the place of indulgence into some other thing, and to make the person feel ki'ilu he's somebody that has this cigarette in his hand. So the person, after time, just doesn't go to war at all. He doesn't even know that there is a war going on. It's nasal keheta. So he'll watch things indiscriminately. Without even thinking that this is a milchama. This is something that I should be fighting on. This is something I should be fighting on. A person's tired. It's hard. You don't want to. It's hard. You're very, very tired. You didn't say Kriya Shema Lamita. You didn't say Kriya Shema Lamita. So you could walk away from the whole Kriya Shema. It's not like over time. You just stop saying Kriya Shema. You don't even think that there's an Indian that I have to say Kriya Shema. It's only for like very firm people, or according to the Arizal or something. Of course, the Gemara. But you just think that it's a lot shayach. It's not shayach. At least if you pull out a say at least creation. So you don't say all the parishes, you don't say all the extra tefillahs, but to stay in the Milchama. It's hard for you. Adarabah. And even if this person sometimes has this little feeling that of a rotzen to fight, he says, he remembers right away, I tried fighting in the past, I never was successful. A person must find an eitzah. Livnos leiv ruach hadash, to build a leiv ruach hadash. Of course, we talk about attaching oneself to tzaddikim, learning the svarim hakadoshim, learning svarim that give tremendous chizik, and davening, not just to walk away. Rav Tzaddik of Yidl, Shalos Rabbeinu, was one of the big chassidim of Rabbi Nachman. He asked Rabbi Nachman, Eich loikchen leiv. So Rabbi Yidl asked Rabbi Nachman, Eich loikchen leiv. Where do you get a heart? How do you get a heart? He wasn't talking about being nice. He was talking about, where do you get a leiv? A gevur. Where do you get gevur shabaleiv? Heishav lo Rabbeinu Zal, Tormuli Eitzel Ezet Tzadik Kibaltem is Oirus Alev, Hekahu Hamir Bepeh. Any tzaddik, Rabbi Nachman says, show me any tzaddik, where you see that tzaddik is a big oived. Or any tzaddik from whom you received his Oirus Alev. Be'emes. Hekahu Hamir Bepeh. Rabbi Nachman said it comes from Hamir Bepeh. Davening. From his borders, from Tefillah, from Tilim. Laharbes Bepeh. When a person wants something very, very badly, he keeps on asking. He keeps on asking. He doesn't stop trying. He doesn't stop talking about it. He keeps on asking about it. If you ever had a kid that wanted a certain toy, he keeps on talking about it. Keeps on asking about it. Tchinis and bakashas. That's the key. Tchinis and bakashas. So Nachman said, "Ve'esaros halev yavu mimela." If you keep up with your tefillas and bakashas, that means you're not surrendering. You're not walking away from the battlefield. You're not hanging up your uniform. Tchinis and bakashas. Tchinis and bakashas. Heishaikil haschil amaisel ilachem ech sheyel lo harbe sheyis. V'zelevad machtil liber ruach shemolchama v'azis. The way to begin. The question was, how do you begin? Hazel gibai kavish yitzah b'seidah. How am I supposed to be kavish my yitzah? The beginning is tefillas and tchinas. Because that's machtil liber ruach shemolchama v'azis. You see that all the soldiers, when they go to war, I mean, the way that it was on the house nowadays, they always were going with a march, with a niggin, right? The niggin, or they have, even when the kids have color war in camp. I never did that. But probably some of you went to color war, you had in camp color war. So they always have, I know for my girls, that they have, they come out all these songs, all these like chants, all these things that they have, all these chizik things that they have. It's a very, very powerful thing. And those are not tefillas, those are just, but a niggin. To say something that you have from a sefer, that you have a certain sentence that you saw in a sefer, and to write it down and to say it over a certain kapitel till a certain pasuk. That's how you go to war with a march, with a niggin. That's how you go to war. Va'az is the kedusha. And that Gvurus Halev comes with the feeling that I know that if I stay with this and I work at it, bevadai, with Hashem's help, I could be Menatzeach. Now, on one's own, by yourself, being by ourselves, this is what we're learning about in the other Chabur. We're talking about without recognizing that in the Chavos Yesod Tzadik, without Hakadosh Baruch Hu Ein Adam Yachalai, Hakadosh Baruch Hu Oizrei, to know that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is your friend and He's going to help you, to have a good friend that gives you chizuk, to have a tzaddik, to learn the Sfarim that tzaddikim. That's what we're going to be talking about at the end, Mitzvah, when we finish this time next week. The lochim at tzaddikim, how to be able to take from the tzaddikim this midah of Gvurus Halev.